Welcome. I see that people are now entering the meeting. Our virtual town hall will start in a few minutes. We put up some information for you. All panelists are muted upon entry. You may submit questions directly through to the moderators in the chat. We are recording this evening, and if you have trouble hearing, please make sure you click join audio on the bottom left. And thank you for coming to our first virtual town hall meeting. Welcome everybody to the first virtual town hall with Fremont educators. We are going to have a start time of about 7:05 this evening, just to ensure that as many people as possible can get into the meeting. And we have the slide up that takes care of some details like being muted upon entry, how you submit questions, which is directly to the moderators. We have 3 moderators. You can send them in the chat. We are going to be recording the town hall this evening, and if you are having trouble hearing, please make sure that you click the join audio button on the bottom left-hand side. Also during the meeting, you can use some of the handy icons that you see at the bottom of your screen, which you will be able to just click on. I just wanted to welcome everyone to the first virtual town hall with Fremont educators. I have some housekeeping information up on the screen for you, which is you will all be muted upon entry. If you would like to ask a question anytime during our town hall tonight, you may submit that to the moderators through the chat. The town hall will be recorded, and if you are having trouble hearing, make sure you click the join audio on the bottom left-hand side of the screen. And we have some great icons right at the bottom that you can press at any time during the presentation if you agree with something or if you don't agree. And then, like I said, you can ask questions the entire time. If we don't have time to answer them, we will make sure we do have a follow-up document. Since we have your emails, we'll be able to contact you and send that out. And I think, well, my watch says 7:05, so I think we're going to go ahead and get started this evening. So welcome to the Fremont Educators' very first virtual town hall. My name is Brandon Dorsey. I am a proud first grade teacher at Parkmont Elementary. I've been teaching in Fremont Unified for 20 years. I'm also the parent of an 8th grader at Centerville Junior High School. Go Mustangs. I would like to now introduce our moderators. I'm going to turn it over to Clark who can introduce the moderators and talk to you just a little bit about that process this evening.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Clark, and I, as the chair of the Community Engagement Committee for FUDTA, I would like to welcome you to tonight's event and thank you for your presence and your participation. As a moderator, I will be, along with our co-moderators, Jess and Liz, who will be coming on camera momentarily. We will be fielding the questions that you can submit through the chat button at the bottom of your screen. You can submit a question to Moderator Clark, Moderator Jess, or Moderator Liz, which we will then be collecting, and we will be asking of panelists towards the end of our session. So there's a chat button, and you can send questions to any of the three of us. Thanks so much for being here tonight.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much, Clark. So why are we here tonight? Well, we are here because Fremont Unified is going to be selecting a brand new superintendent. And I know we have people here tonight who have a range of experience in our district, from school board trustees to former trustees to staff to parents that have maybe never thought about what the superintendent really does. But I wanted to just give you a brief overview of what the superintendent job entails and why it is so important to us. So first, the superintendent is the Board of Education liaison. So what that means is they're basically the CEO of the district, and they're responsible for keeping the board informed of events and happenings throughout the district. They also inform them and make recommendations on the daily operations. And if the board votes to approve something, it's the superintendent's duty to actually carry that out. The superintendent is a district leader. That means that the superintendent is my boss as an educator. They're my principal's boss. They're her director's boss, the bosses of the assistant superintendents, and all of the support personnel. It's their job to basically oversee all the personnel in the district and make sure that things run smoothly. The superintendent also has to understand finances. You know, we have some big challenges coming up ahead of us, and it's super important that the next superintendent has experience in managing budgets and how to build a healthy budget, and has creative ideas what to do when we may have shortfalls. The superintendent also helps manage daily operations of the district. That means that they may be helping oversee implementation of, bonds and improvements, parcel taxes, district curriculum, district improvements, district policies, and transportation. And finally, one of the jobs of the superintendent is to lobby for the district. That means that they're building relationships with all of the employee groups, the parents, businesses in the community. They work with the media, they work with other districts and build relationships, and they build relationships with our local governing bodies like the city council and local politicians to make sure that we have good resources in our district. So that is basically an overview of that job. Now, I glided right over that. It is an extremely challenging but rewarding job, and we are looking forward to seeing who our next superintendent might be. With that, I wanted to just give you a little history on the superintendents in Fremont, starting with the first superintendent that we had when I became a teacher in 2000, and that was Sharon Jones. She was a teacher in our district and actually worked here for 37 years, working her way up. She was our superintendent as an internal candidate for 12 years. When she retired, Doug Gephardt was selected as our interim superintendent. He had been the assistant superintendent of human resources. The board selected John Brickwald, who was here for about 3 years. He was an external candidate. And then after he left, Doug Gephardt, who had gone back to be the assistant sup of HR, became the superintendent, where he served for 2 years as an internal candidate. When he retired, Milt Warner, who had been the principal at Washington High and then the assistant superintendent of instruction, became the superintendent for 2 years. And then in 2010, when he retired, the board did an open search like they're going to do now, where they looked at internal and external candidates, and they hired Jim Morris, who was an external candidate who came from the Los Angeles Unified School District. When Dr. Morris retired after 7 years, Kim Wallace became the superintendent. She was the assistant superintendent of instruction, and she was our superintendent for a little less than 3 years. And in March of this year, the board appointed Dr. Raul Zamora, the acting superintendent, while they are doing this search. So that's kind of the history of superintendents for the last 26 years. And, we have had some success with internal and external candidates. And I just wanted to give you that brief overview, especially if this is something that's brand new to you. Now I want to talk about the search process. So this was actually amended this evening, and there are 4 phases. So we are in phase 1 right now, which is where the search firm that was hired is looking for what qualities we would like to see in our superintendent. They are engaging employee groups, students, parents, and community, all who are key stakeholders. They've had a 24+ meetings scheduled this week. There is an online survey. So if you have not taken that, you definitely need to take it, and you need to get at least 5 friends or family members and other people you know in the community to take it, because it's important that the board have enough input to make a good decision. So that's where we are right now. The next step is phase 2, which is finding candidates. So they have to advertise. They are actively recruiting. That's their job. They're a search firm, and they're getting confidential references from the candidates. So a little bit earlier, I spoke about that it's a open search, meaning that they're looking internal and externally, but it's a confidential process. So really only the search firm will know who the candidates are, and then ultimately the board will know who they are when they do have interviews, which moves us right on to stage 3. That's selecting the final candidates. So again, the board reiterated tonight in their meeting that they wanted it to be confidential, that around June 8th, those recommendations will be presented to the board for final candidate interviews, and that there will be 2 rounds of interviews that will be closed, which means that only the board will be attending those. Community stakeholders will not be. And that's the same process that was used in 2010 when Dr. Morris was selected. And finally, it was recommended that they do visit the final candidate's district. There may be some challenges with that if we're still sheltered in place. And then the board can determine whether or not they want to offer any of those candidates a contract. And finally, when we get to stage 4, that's the contract negotiation, and the board would approve that contract in an open session, just as they have any of the assistant superintendents contracts that have come up tonight. So why are we here this evening? We are here to hear from educators in Fremont about Well, we're going to have them speak about the 5 foundational factors of what makes a successful superintendent. And I'm going to just give you a brief overview of what those 5 areas are: visibility, relationships, communication, instructional leadership, and a shared vision. And with that, I would like to introduce our very first panelist. That is Victoria Burbeck Herrera, where she is going to be speaking about the importance of visibility in a superintendent. Victoria?
Good evening, everyone. I'm Victoria Burbeck Herrera, currently serving in my 3rd year as the president of the Fremont Unified District Teachers Association. It is within this role that I have the privilege to express my gratitude for your attendance this evening. But for me, this role is just one step along many in my lifelong involvement in Fremont public education. Like so many of our educators, and I'm sure you as community members here today, we have multiple reasons for investment in the well-being of our school district. For myself, not only have I been a secondary mathematics educator for 15 years for FUSD, but I was also here for 13 years as a student, kindergarten through graduating from Washington High in the class of '99, along with my brother a few years later. My older son is currently a junior at Washington High School and has been in Fremont Unified his entire educational career. Additionally, both of my parents teach in FUSD. My mom is a math teacher, just like I am, but at Hopkins Junior High, and my dad teaches social studies at Centerville, where I went. Many decades ago, I started as a 4-year-old at Glenmore Elementary, and happily, my niece will be starting there for kindergarten herself this upcoming year, and my youngest son will start just a couple years later in kindergarten, but in Niles. So hopefully I've made it clear, but I love Fremont, and I'm so proud of the amazing public education system that we have here. I share my many Fremont hats with you, not only as a way of introducing myself to those that don't know me already, but also to highlight what many of us here already know and feel. The Fremont Unified School District is everywhere in our community. And in fact, the two are completely entwined. We know that the step we're talking about today in looking for the right superintendent is critical, because that individual plays an invaluable role in maintaining and further building up the excellence we want for all of our children. Not only do we have tens of thousands of students in Fremont, but we also have their parents, guardians, and extended family, and of course, thousands of employees. So while Fremont is considered a large urban city with almost 250,000 people, we have well over 100,000 members of our community that are directly touched by the quality and scope of our Fremont public education system here. And that means we're everywhere in all of our many roles and hats that we have. For our superintendent, that sort of visibility and feeling of being everywhere is something we believe is really important for someone to take on. Our next superintendent will need to be highly visible and engaged in our community, as well as visible in our schools. Of course, we know our students and staff are doing amazing things inside of the classroom. However, educational involvement and support is seen in really significant ways throughout a variety of events and organizations in our community in Fremont. The high caliber of our public education in the Fremont Unified School District is only achieved with the participation of all of our stakeholders, and an approachable superintendent showing up in various arenas is crucial. We want to see a superintendent who attends all types of events. So as an instructional leader, their desire to learn about and be curious about what's going on in all environments is evident. We are so blessed here to have an active parent-guardian community for our students, and we want to see our superintendent working with that group closely. Learning about what parents and families care about and how we in the school district can support those priorities is imperative. And really seeing our superintendent out and about as the leader of our school district is necessary to make that connection. Being the superintendent of Fremont Unified cannot be just a job. This is going to be someone who's going to demonstrate on a daily basis that this is their way of life, and they are going to take just as much pride as we all do in upholding the fabulous education we see in Fremont Unified. The visibility of our next superintendent will mean that they show up in our community as well as in their high quality of work on behalf of our students.
Thank you so much, Victoria. Our next panelist is Nicole Green, and Nicole is going to be speaking about the importance of relationships as it regards to being a successful superintendent. Nicole?
Hi, everyone. Just introduce myself a little bit. I'm Nicole Green. I have been in FUSD for 8 years. Half of that was attendance clerk at American High School, so I have that experience being a support staff member. And then now I teach 6th grade at Chadbourne Elementary School. I'm also a parent in this district. I have 2 sons that attend schools in the Washington attendance area. One is a 6th grader at Parkmont, so he'll be on his way to Centerville soon. And then the other one is a freshman at Washington High. So I want to talk to you about relationships. We need a superintendent that has the qualities needed to build positive relationships with all of our stakeholders in the community. So I think some of the key qualities that this candidate will need is being approachable, being empathetic, and being genuine. I think those are the key ideas. If our future superintendent is a former educator, then that will give them that important perspective when they're making policy decisions. They'll be able to ask themselves, is what the district asking of teachers actually possible? Does it make sense and does it work in their workday? If the superintendent can empathize and draw on their prior experiences as an educator, then they can better understand types of challenges that teachers and students might face. As a former support staff member myself, I've often drawn on that knowledge of that experience when I'm considering something that I might need help with the front office. I might have a task I need or a question I have. I can draw on that experience and say, you know, does this make sense? Is this something they have time to even help me with, or something that's possible for them? So I'm hoping that the superintendent can do a similar drawing on their prior experience. And one of the other things I mentioned is being approachable. I know I've been thankful to have those principals that you feel comfortable just going to their door and knocking and saying, I have a problem or I have a question. So I would love for our parents in our community, our teachers, our students, our staff members to feel that level of comfort with their superintendent, that they can approach them when they need help. So that's basically it, what I feel like a candidate would need to build positive relationships.
Great. Thank you so much, Nicole. Our next panelist is Jasmine Zartman, and Jasmine's going to be speaking about how the importance of communication is for a successful superintendent. Jasmine?
Hi, everyone. My name is Dr. Jasmine Zartman. I'm so excited to be here. I am the FUDTA Director of Special Groups. In Fremont School District, I work as a program specialist for special education in the Kennedy attendance area. I've also have a credential as a school psychologist. I've worked at several different sites in Fremont School District and absolutely love my job. In addition to that, along with so many of us tonight, I'm a parent of a child that goes to Warwick Elementary School. And I have a 3-year-old who you can see in the picture will be soon going to Warwick in a couple of years. In addition to that, I'm a longtime resident. I've been here for over 20 years. So today I'm going to be talking to you about communication. The art of communication is the language of leadership. This is a quote written by James Humes, an author and former presidential speechwriter. And what an incredible difference it makes when we have a leader that has mastered communication. I'm here tonight to talk to you about the elements of communication we are seeking in our new superintendent. First and foremost, it is extremely important for our next superintendent to communicate with sincerity and honesty and show us not only through words, but body language, like friendly eye contact, attentive posture, and warmth. This leads into the next element of communication, which is visibility. Having a superintendent that emails and video messages regularly certainly is important in communications. However, having a superintendent that has their whole heart and soul in this position and is very visible in person will draw us together as a community and really help us to feel we are cared about, on a personal, connected level. Another important element is listening. A superintendent that not only communicates their ideas and thoughts, but also seeks to gain understanding of other perspectives will further build on respect and trust. Having a superintendent that affirms with actions and follow through is important also. Overall, however, during these challenging times, finding ways to connect with the district in a heartfelt way will bring us all together. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jasmine. The next panelist is Peter Geschke. He is going to be speaking about the importance of the superintendent being an instructional leader. Pete?
Thank you, Brandon. I'm Peter Geschke. I've been a teacher in Fremont Unified since 1989. I taught at Centerville Junior High, and then I moved on to Mission High School 25 years ago. I've been teaching science there since that time. I'm also a member of the Mission Possible Parent Faculty Association as a teacher rep and as a parent. I've been a parent in FUSD since 2005. I'm graduating this year as a parent, as my son is a senior at Mission San Jose. So it's very exciting for me to be here tonight, and I appreciate the opportunity. So as far as the superintendent's role in providing instructional leadership, one of the ways a new superintendent could leverage the resources in our district would be to use over the 30,000 combined years of experience of educators that we have here in Fremont Unified to build professional development that is relevant and timely. Now, as an example, this was very well done just a couple of weeks ago on April 8th and 9th, when we had professional development to learn more about distance learning in light of the current shelter in place. And this was led by a large group within our district, experienced professionals who know these tools and are helping all of us to learn how to use them effectively to connect to student learning. So the role of the superintendent would then be to draw on those resources that we do have here and allow us to do the best we can to provide an excellent educational experience for everyone in our district.
Thank you very much, Pete. Next, I'm going to introduce Dan Vega. He's going to talk about the importance of a shared vision in regards to being a successful superintendent. Dan?
Okay, good evening. A little about me. I've been teaching in Fremont Unified for 35 years, so I go just a little bit beyond most of the people here. I've been at Kennedy the entire time. And beyond serving at Kennedy, I was on the Equity Commission for the district for about 4 years. But my real journey started as a kindergartner back in 1965 at Fremont Elementary, which is no longer here, but still in my heart. A teacher, again, in 1985 was my starting point. And then as a parent, I started in 2005 and finished that journey last year with my son, my youngest, graduating. So tonight, I'm to talk about a shared vision, okay? And in a shared vision, I want to use a personal experience to try and get a better picture of what I'm trying to share. So back in 1998, what we had was a time when Kennedy was on the slate to close. And we were concerned, we were looking for ways that we might be able to keep the school open. We sat down with Sharon Jones, our superintendent, who at the time shared her vision. And her vision obviously was to support all of the students and the stakeholders in Fremont Unified. And one of the things that she was really concerned about was obviously student improvement. And so we suggested a plan. It was a little radical at the time, but it was a 4x4 schedule, one in which we might get a little bit more time with kids and some other things. Well, to make the long story short, she listened, which was a key characteristic. But what we did is we looked at and tried to talk about how that shared vision of what we could do with this program to make it something special. And she bought and she helped sell. And so in talking with all of the stakeholders in the district, from FUDTA to PTSA, looking at communicating with the school board, we were granted that opportunity. And because of that, and the continued support of superintendents by taking a homegrown idea, people that work at it, work hard, using whatever things that we have available to us to analyze and to support what we're looking for, the superintendent's job is to make sure that we keep moving in the direction that is that shared vision. And we've done that. And luckily, over the last 10 years, not so lucky, it's been hard work, but over the last 10 years, we have shown a consistent improvement in scores and closing the achievement gap. And it's something that I'm very proud of and couldn't have been done without having that shared vision, support from the superintendent. So when I'm looking for in a superintendent is somebody that'll listen, somebody that'll express what that vision is, understand that there's a lot of different ways to achieve that same vision, and supporting those that can make it work. So I appreciate the opportunity to be here tonight. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dan. That ends our panelist portion of our virtual town hall this evening. I hope that you have been utilizing the chat feature to send questions to the moderators, because that is really your avenue to get information out into the virtual world. One of the reasons why FUDTA wanted to, and Fremont educators wanted to do this, and we've never done anything like this before, is that we wanted to engage in a larger conversation with our community. And since, we are currently sheltered in place, this was really the best way to do it. But this may be a good way to engage people in the future. So again, I wanted to thank you for tuning in this evening to our virtual town hall. I wanted to thank all of our panelists. And just to reiterate, they spoke about the 5 foundational factors of what makes a successful superintendent. So thank you to Victoria Verbeck Herrera, who spoke about visibility, Nicole Green, who spoke about relationships, Dr. Jasmine Zartman, who spoke about communication, Peter Geschke, who spoke about instructional leadership, and Dan Vega, who spoke about shared vision. So thank you once again. I am now going to turn it over to Clark, Liz, and Jess, who are our moderators, and they are going to field some questions for our panelists this evening. So Clark, take it away.
So this is a question that I think goes to visibility among many other things. And so Victoria, I was going to ask you to please address, how does a superintendent's visibility play into their ability to find consensus within a district as large as Fremont Unified? How does visibility play a role in that?
That is a really important question, because we are an incredibly large district with not only a lot of stakeholders in number, but in opinion and viewpoint. And a lot of getting consensus is that first step of listening. And that means actually being in the room, as well as honoring the structures that Fremont has in place. So something that I would encourage all of you to do, if you haven't before, is to actually going to the district website. We can actually see that there are opportunities for community members and parents to get engaged in a variety of committees that we have. And that is one thing that the superintendent oversees, really as an umbrella for Fremont Unified, and a way to really make sure that we're not only making the most informed decisions that we can, but if we have a chance at getting consensus whenever possible, it's definitely going to mean utilizing those steps and the structures that we have in place, so that we're really listening to everyone involved before we make or even embark on big decisions that we need to in Fremont Unified.
Thank you, Vic. I'll hand it to Jess now.
Yes, this question is for Dan. How does a superintendent go about finding a consensus with a district as large as Fremont Unified?
Now that's a challenging question. You know, how do they go about building consensus? It's not easy. It requires a very diligent, hardworking work ethic to get out and talk to every one of the stakeholder groups that's going to matter. And so we can talk about visibility, we can talk about communication, all of those pieces play into that shared vision, because you have to go out and find from every one of the stakeholders. And stakeholder groups are immense. I mean, you're talking about parents, teachers, administrators, CEA, CEA community, school board, all of those groups. But then there's also programs like GATE and ELD and special ed, and oh my goodness, it just keeps on going. And then you take a look at all of the people that you might have to associate with in the media, and the finance group that's within in the district, and the HR group. How is it going to affect teachers? How is it going to affect the curriculum, whatever it is that you're planning on doing? Facilities, a huge issue that you have to take into account. And of course, local government pieces. I mean, when you talk about somebody having a shared vision, they can't have blinders on and be looking at it from a perspective of a single individual from a single group. They really have to widen the scope and take a look at from everybody's, they have to sit in everybody's chair, look through their eyes and see how it's going to affect what's going on. So the job's not easy. It requires a lot of work.
Thank you. I have another question that has come in for Pete. Your question, what does good instructional leadership from a superintendent look like?
One of the things that's very helpful for the superintendent to do is to build policies that affect students and families in our district from the ground up. And so in order to do that, this is going to take, in some cases, months or even years to have those issues decided in committees, engaging all stakeholders. And then as those committees produce whatever policy they feel is going to fit for this particular issue, whatever it happens to be, the role of the superintendent is then to take that work that's been done by those committees, those stakeholders, the professional educators, and shepherd that change through the school board who ultimately trusts that professional judgment, so that the final implementation of that plan would lead to the best possible outcome for our district.
Thank you so much, Pete, for that. This next question is a question that is for Jasmine. So Jasmine, in your role as both a program specialist and as a psychologist and as a parent of a student in the district, I was wondering if you could please give us your insight into how can the superintendent use their role as an advocate to speak up for vulnerable students?
Such a good question. And I think during these uncertain times, could be even more students. There probably are more students that really, really need support right now. And I think one of the ways that a superintendent can do that is checking in with principals, visiting sites, talking to the teachers, getting in touch with the specialists, saying, how's it going? How are these students doing? Finding out personal stories that can really connect the superintendent to those students, and seeking ways to help them. Some of the ways that we've already started talking about as a district is really looking at PBIS, restorative practices, but also in these uncertain financial times, looking at creative ways and solutions to make sure that we have enough staff to support these students through grants or internships. Thank you.
This next question is for Nicole. What sort of relationship should the superintendent model for principals at the site level?
That's a good question. I think it's really important, to collaborate with all of the stakeholders so that they have that understanding on the other side when they're making a decision. They can't advocate for something if they don't know about it. So I think collaborating with the people that, you know, these policies affect would be helpful. So if they can model that kind of behavior for principals, you know, that does carry over to principals as well. Of course, they need to be positive collaborators, and they need to be motivated to work with their stakeholders.
Thank you, Nicole. My next question is for Victoria. Is it important to make good connections and build relationships with educators and the community as a whole? And how could they do that?
Absolutely. I think that part of the reason that visibility is so important is that with the time that we have in a day, just like we do with our own families, you dedicate and show that your priorities are where you spend your time. So the first step that I hope to see in a new superintendent would be really someone that is spending time out and about each day, however small an amount of time that they can, you know, tear themselves away. A lot of the work we know is going to be done at the district office with directors, with other management, but it is critical that we see the visibility in dedicating themselves to extending themselves, and the relationships that they have outside of the district office are going to be just as important in being able to support our students through everything that our community has to offer.
Thank you for that answer. I was wondering, Dan, if you could maybe field this question that came in. So this question is, when it comes to shared accountability, can you identify the roles of individuals who are involved in that process? So thinking of shared accountability, shared vision, who would be involved in that process?
Wow, another tough one. Shared accountability is an interesting question, only because, you know, when you're trying to measure accountability, something has to be measurable. And, you know, anecdotal things are nice, but to actually measure something is important. I mean, I guess that's coming from a science teacher. Wanting to have, you know, something that I can actually measure is important. But who is it that's going to be measuring those things? I really think it depends on what the vision is about. If we're looking, say, at an EL population, I think that the accountability falls on the teachers that are EL, the program specialists that are in EL, and it's important that a superintendent is in touch with those people that are going to be delivering that information and understanding where it's coming from. I think that the difficult part about the accountability side is, are you actually measuring what you hope to measure? And so if I'm sitting in the superintendent's seat and I've got this shared vision of something that I'm trying to accomplish, then I have to find that place or that person or that group that can gather the right information to make the best choices. All too often, people take anecdotal data and just make a decision based on anecdotal rather than some real data and coming from something that is very important. And even, I mean, I'm thinking about an example of, Jim Morris. He basically adopted a student at Kennedy High School, would show up unannounced and not go through the front office, but go directly to the student and find out from the student how certain things that we were doing at the district level were impacting the student at that site, just to get a different vision as to the accountability side to see if it's really happening. So who are the people? I think that's the challenge. It really depends on who it is, or what it is that you're measuring, or what it is that you're looking at, and who best can give you some true facts in that analysis.
We have a question for Nicole. How can the superintendent effectively work with so many stakeholders? And also, if Dan would also like to chime in on that a little bit too, it seems like that, yeah, we don't want to keep going to Dan over and over, but he may also have some comments with that.
So how can the superintendent effectively work with so many stakeholders? I think that, you know, it's a challenge. I think a lot of our panelists have talked about how many stakeholders there is, how large a district there is. I think one of the most important things would be making those meaningful connections. Again, if they see you, they know you, trust is a big issue. If they can trust you, and if they're soliciting input as well, that would help to actually, you know, be connecting with these different communities that we have. We have all kinds of different socioeconomic and socio-emotional things happening at different school sites. So I think it's really important to make those connections, solicit input, and just be very, very genuine in your connections with people. Dan, what do you think?
You know, I totally agree. I think, like I said in my opening comment about it being a hard job because you have to make so many connections in order to get a shared vision. Shared, that's what it means. If you're going to share a vision, then you have to share a conversation, maybe a meal, maybe, you know, a meeting. I mean, for sure, but you definitely need to sit down and understand where the people are coming from in trying to achieve whatever the vision is that you're trying to create.
Thank you, Dan and Nicole. I have another question for Pete. How can FUSD determine which candidate will provide good instructional leadership?
Well, I think what's important about instructional leadership is that, from my perspective, this is purely my own perspective, I think this person has to have been a teacher at some point in their career, at some level, so that we make sure that they have a connection to students, a true connection, so that when we talk about whatever program or whatever policy or whatever new curriculum that's coming up that needs to be decided on, that there's that connection back to the student themselves, like Dan was mentioning earlier in his example, that we can tie it directly to that one student in your class that you're thinking of. Like, I can think of a student right now in my class that I want to connect to, and I want to make sure that they understand this very point. And I think that's the core mission of our district, is to make educational opportunities for students. And the leader of that is our superintendent, who drives that for our whole district. Thank you.
Thank you. This is a question for Victoria. Given the very interesting times in which we are living right now, and this is a question that seems to be on several people's minds, and they are wondering, how would our new superintendent ensure safe working and learning conditions during the pandemic, keeping in mind that children are not always understanding social distancing?
Yes, very, very important question right now. I believe that no matter how much work is getting done, kind of going back to a little bit of my answer earlier, no matter what kind of work is getting done at the district office, you can only do so much without actually being in the learning and working environments within Fremont Unified. So in order to truly make the best decisions, you're gonna have to get out to those locations. And so it has to be a priority for our new superintendent. Even as large as we are, with over 40 school sites around our district, we're gonna have to see someone that's willing to get out there and look at where those trouble spots are. So we might be in a really unique situation right now with the pandemic, so it's more important than ever. But this would be a similar question to what happens when we're looking at a new theater for Kennedy, or significant repairs at American High School, or an older elementary school that has unsafe asphalt We're going to need a superintendent, especially when it rises to the level of being an agenda item at our school board level. We're going to need someone who's willing to get in the car and go see those places, because that's where our kids are. And so just as in this situation, when we get to the situation where we want to bring kids back and we think that that might even be remotely safe, if we choose the right superintendent, we're going to see that superintendent right there first day back. We're going to see them with kids. We're going to see them with educators asking how things are going. We're going to see them talking to custodians. Did they have the time and resources needed, or do we need to put the brakes on and reevaluate? So we need to see that reflection, but again, the visibility of a superintendent that's willing to get out there and be where our kids are and where our employees are.
Yes, we have a question for Pete. How do you see budget issues that we are facing, and how should they be handled from the superintendent?
Okay, wow. Give me an easy question. Thank you, Jess. The budget situation, I believe, is going to be a huge challenge for us going forward. As you can probably imagine, the state of California is going through a pretty tough economic time right now, and that is going to impact our district. And so in times past, back in the economic troubles that we had at the beginning of the 2010s, all of the employees in the district participated in helping shepherd the district through that time. And so we will also do that in this time. But the important thing is to realize that the impact to the student needs to be as small as possible. And so that's probably the best way to look at it, is how does it affect the student, and also in light of keeping the employees to be able to work in this area, which is very expensive to live in. Thank you.
Okay, so taking a look at the time, I am going to ask our final question of our panelists. There are some other questions that have been posed that we will put out answers to as we get a chance to look through them, but we only have time for one more response. And I was going to throw this question to Dan. And the question is, what characteristics have we seen in previous superintendents that we would like to have in our new superintendent? So what are some characteristics or qualities that you've seen in the superintendents that have been here during your tenure in Fremont Unified that you think would be important for us to see in our new superintendent?
Wow. I think I've mentioned a couple. I mean, you know, visibility by Jim was amazing. He was out and about and, you know, present at everything. I remember going to my daughter's Glenmore Elementary play and sitting next to Jim because he and his wife came to the play. I mean, he was just at every single event. So visibility was a key. I think that relationship-wise, I can give you personal examples on just about every one of these. Relationship-wise, Doug Gephardt walked up to me one day and said, you know, I noticed that you didn't do this one thing that I needed to get done or whatever for some reason. And he says, I really need you to take care of this. Can you do that for me and get this taken care of? And, you know, that kind of reaching out and personal touch was pretty amazing. Leadership. Some of the toughest leadership decisions have come during tough economic times or other kinds of issues over a bunch of years. And the superintendent that led Kennedy through anyway, the time when they actually voted to close us and showed leadership in how we would address such a dramatic change, and then eventually being able to stay open. But that leadership role was huge. Shared vision from past. I think that when you set a direction and you lay it down and you say, this is where we want to go, and I'm here to support you in getting that vision accomplished, and backing it up with true deeds is an important piece. So the 5 things that we were talking about tonight, I really think are the key 5 characteristics that I can assure you make a difference, because I've seen how those things do make a difference in a district through all of the people. And I've been here quite a while. I go back to Ralph Belwamini as a superintendent. That was the one that was just before Sharon Jones. All of these superintendents and all of the principals that I've had through all of this, it's all the same. It's all about leadership and all of those visions of leadership that we have to talk about. Thank you.
All right. I want to thank all of our moderators and panelists for sending and answering all those questions. I want to thank everyone in our audience this evening. And I do realize that there were some questions that were not answered, but please be assured that we will be putting together a document and we will answer those questions and send them out to you to the best of our ability. So we are almost out of time. We wanted to wrap up this evening by talking about what the educators in Fremont feel our Fremont students deserve. So Hannah, if you could get that slide up for me. Great. So we believe wholeheartedly that Fremont students deserve highly qualified and committed educators to care for them, healthy learning environments, and individual attention. And that doesn't just mean that it is from the educators. We believe that all components of the districts, from our school secretaries to custodians to our lunchtime supervisors, to the people who serve lunch in the cafeterias, to anyone who might come in contact with parents or students at the district office, our principals, and all up through every single layer of management. And the reason why we wanted to have this town hall this evening, to let the public know what we want in a very positive way, we also wanted to hear from you so you can give us more information. That's how we build a stronger community. And we love our schools. We want Fremont Unified to do well. We enjoy working here, and we are very invested in the success of our district. And we believe the success of our district starts with the superintendent. That the superintendent actually sets the tone and helps move our district forward. And we want the best possible candidate that can do all of those things. So I am going to have an ask for you. I alluded to it earlier. So what can you do? Well, you absolutely need to take the superintendent survey. It's here. It is also on the homepage of the district website this evening at the school board meeting. I believe the school board and the consultants agreed to try to host some additional meetings. So if you weren't in one of the stakeholder groups and you really want to give your input kind of face-to-face, really in a Zoom meeting, there will be information on the district website for you to do that. So I think I also said that you needed to get 5 friends to do it. Yeah, let's make that 10. So let's get another 2,000 surveys back to the consultants so we can get the best possible candidate that we can. Finally, I would like to give my appreciation to all of our panelists, Pete, Dan, Nicole, Jasmine, and Victoria. I wanted to recognize all of the people behind the scenes this evening. I call them my producers. That would be our Zoom queen, Sally, Amanda Klingler, Hannah Moreno, Ryan Howard, Kara Coleman, Chuck Ontiveros, Megan Huey, and Lisa Denton. And I wanted to thank some of our school board members that were just in a meeting and graciously tuned in here. Ann Crosby, Diane Jones, and Desiree Campbell, as well as the acting superintendent, Dr. Raul Zamora. I did see lots of other familiar names from the community, whether they're Ohlone boards of trustees, former planning commissioners, people running for office. I just wanted to thank you once again. Whether you are a principal who tuned in, or a FUDTA member, a union member, a community member, or a parent. I appreciate you being on here tonight, and on behalf of the educators in Fremont, we hope that your family is safe. We hope that your family is healthy. And please, once again, don't forget to fill that survey out and have more people do it. Have a wonderful evening, and we hope to see you again in another town hall. Good night, everybody.